Hello and welcome to another series of free educational videos. In this series, I will be covering GCSE, IGCSE, and GCE O Level economics. Please keep in mind this first topic, first unit. This can also be used as the first unit for A Levels and IB economics as well. The first unit has been divided into three topics, because the first unit is all about introduction to economics. So we will be learning about basic economic concepts as the topic one, and then the topic two will be about production possibility curve, and topic three will be about different types of economic systems. But everything comes under the unit one. The rest will be done in each unit. Actually, I have divided the whole GCSE and IGCSE syllabus into about 26 units. So you can cover everything. You can cover the whole GCE O Levels or GCSE or GCSE economic syllabus within 26 units. All right, let's continue with this. Okay, the basic economic concept. So here we are about to discuss about the basic things like definitions of basic things related to economics. All right. So first of all, let's talk about what is economics, with a diagram actually, right? So if you can see, right, now I have drawn some circles. Why? I'll tell you the reason why. Okay, if you look at the bigger circle, it shows human bonds, and the smaller one, resources, right? Okay, now human bonds means, which is something, greater, something different to needs, because whether you have done economics or not, even in like smaller grades, you would have learned about basic needs of people. We can say food, clothing, shelter, and various other things, but mainly food, clothing, and shelter. But although these are needs, now see, for example, one of the need for people is food. But this need of food can be satisfied with maybe potatoes, maybe bread, maybe rice, whichever the staple food in, that particular area, which part of the world people live in. But actually, instead of when bread is available to satisfy your need of food, if someone wants a pizza, then that is a luxury. You can survive with bread, but to satisfy your need of food, you need a pizza. And this is an example of a want. So, in fact, human wants are unlimited in nature. What does that mean is when one want of a person is satisfied, he or she will come up with thousands and hundreds and millions and trillions of other wants. That means humans' wants cannot be 100% satisfied. So they are unlimited. Although these are unlimited, I have just used a circle and drawn a boundary here, which is not exactly true, but I've just used it like that. So just to show that wants are greater, wants are, many for people, right? Now, how to satisfy the wants? Now, what do we want? Actually, we want food, we want clothing, we want books, we want TV, we want to see a movie, we like to listen to some songs. So these are our wants. Now, these wants are satisfied with what? So those books, food, movies. So these things are made up. That means the books, food, movies, clothing, all of these are made up of, they are created, they are made by things called resources, right? Right. So these resources are like, let's say, for example, to make food, we need, let's say, basic food, like for food items from the plants, trees. So we need a land. We need to grow trees. And these have to be plucked and cleaned. And these have to be sent to the shops or stores to be, stored and to be sold. So we need workers there. So that means what we saw was we need pieces of land, we need equipment, we need workers. These are what we call resources. Now, where do we get the resources? Actually, the resources are as small as the size of the earth. That means whatever we want, we can only make those things within the earth, because within the earth is what we have: land, we have humans and all that. We can't bring any stuff from outside the world, outside the earth. But what happens is the human wants, if you want to measure, if you look at the amount of human wants can go above and beyond where the earth is, above and beyond the sky is, actually, right? When people talk about, say, like, you can earn the maximum salary, sky is your limit and all that, right? There also they say sky is the limit, but actually when it comes to wants of people, sky isn't the limit as well. People want so many. So in that case, the wants of people cannot be, fully satisfied with the resources we have, because the resources are not enough to satisfy all the human wants. This is common to any part of the world, whether it is really an underdeveloped country or it is a fully developed country. Regardless of what country it is, every single country on earth experiences this, unlimited human bonds compared to the resources. So if you put this smaller circle into this bigger circle, what will happen is there will still be a big vacuum space. That means that tries to show that the resources are short in supply compared to the human wants. And this problem in economics is called the problem of scarcity. So scarcity means, simply what does it mean is shortage of resource, shortage of the resources in relation to human wants. I mean, if you don't compare it with human wants, maybe we have plenty of resources in some countries, although in some countries they may just have very little resource. But when you compare with the human wants, even this plenty of resources become scarce, right? So we have just learned three economic problems, that is human wants being unlimited and resources being limited, this leading to a problem of scarcity. Right now, because of this problem, we will end up with another problem, another issue, right? What's that? Is called choices, right? That means, now see, when we just have a very limited resource, now, for example, let's say we have 100 pounds in hand, and with this 100 pounds, let's say, we can only do one of the three things, not all the three things. One, let's say we can go and have a party at Pizza Hut, or we can have a party in McDonald's, or we can take our friends. Let's say this is to celebrate our birthday, right? So we can take our friends to a cinema. One of the three things can only be done with 100 pounds. So now in this situation, what happens is we just have 100 pounds, but we have wants. We want to go to cinema, we want to go to McDonald's, we want to go to Pizza Hut. But we can't do all of these three with 100 pounds. We need 300 pounds, but we don't have. So in this case, we will have to make choices between the three. We'll just have to say, okay, which one is more important for me? Number one, which one is number two, which one is number three, like that. We classify these different options into different choices. And obviously, we will have to choose only one. So when we just choose one, I'm pretty sure you and I and all of us will be very sad for losing the other two options. But when it comes to losing the other two options, what happens is, now, even though, let's say, for example, we chose to go to McDonald's. So once we go to McDonald's and our second option is going to Pizza Hut, and the third option is to go for a cinema, go for a movie. Now, since we have chosen to go to McDonald's, then we will be losing the other two. Even though we are sad about both, we will be more sad about the next best alternative. We had three alternatives, in that the next best alternative is it was going to Pizza Hut and have a meal over there. So that will be our next best option, which we had to sacrifice, and we will be upset about this. And this feeling of upset mood is called the opportunity cost. So what do we mean by the opportunity cost in economics is we say it is the cost of the next best alternative foregone when selecting the best alternative. Right. I would suggest that you take a book for every lesson that we are doing, and you take down the notes on my slides, which will be very useful for you to do a last moment revision. Right. Okay. You can pause the video and copy this down. Okay, so you must have copied this down. Let's move on to the next slide. And here we have the definition of economics. So simply from the previous slide that we learned about different, economic concepts, that is, unlimited wants, limited resources, choices, and opportunity cost. So here from that, what we conclude to economics is it is a subject where we try to, economics is a study of human behavior. It's a subject which is learning about human behavior. And there, when we learn about the human behavior, we realize that humans have unlimited human wants. So all these unlimited wants cannot be satisfied with the resources we have, because the resources are limited in supply. However, we have to make sure that with the limited resources, we satisfy this unlimited human wants in the most effective manner. So that means, since we make so many different choices, of these choices, if we choose the really the most best alternative, then the opportunity cost, then the one that we have lost. But even though we have lost, we will not feel that sad, because we have chosen the most best. This is the job of the economists around the world. That is what? To use the limited resources to satisfy the unlimited human wants more effectively. Right, okay. So since we already spoke about the basic economic concepts, I have explained to you about, the scarcity, opportunity cost, and choices. I'm hoping to, give a small text, small note on each one of those concepts in one of the upcoming slides. Hopefully, you will have that. You will be able to copy those things down. Okay, now let's talk about some other concepts also in economics. Now, as I said, this first unit is just going to give you an introduction into what economics is about. Right. Now, we said human wants have to be satisfied and resources are limited. Okay, now resources, whether it is land or whether it is labor, we cannot, eat or drink or dress or watch the land, labor, capital, and all of these things. So we need actually goods. So these goods have to be made with the combination of land, machines, equipment, labor, all that. So these goods making process is what we mean by production. So production means what? It is the process of making or providing goods and services to satisfy human wants, needs. All right. Exchange is another concept where we, now, because it's like this, the goods are produced by people called producers or manufacturers. Now, once they produce, these should reach the consumers. So there, to reaching this to with the consumers, it involves a process of taking and giving. Now, sometimes the producer may take money and give the goods. That exchange process is actually called trade, or sometimes it can be called something called a barter exchange, where a producer of one product, let's say, for example, a person who is like involved in farming, such as like animal husbandry, farming animals he is looking after. So he supplies meat to somebody else who is farming, maybe fruits or vegetables. So they supply one good and exchange it with another good, or even for a service. This is also called exchange, and that's called barter exchange. So simply, exchange is the process of buying and selling of goods and services, so that it goes from the producer who produces the goods to the consumer who will be consuming the goods. So consumption is the other process, that is of using up. Making, called production, using is called consumption, and exchanging it between the maker and the user, or producer and the consumer, is what is meant by exchange. All right. So you can actually pause after each slide and copy those slides. Okay, now let's move on to something called the factors of production or resources. Right. Now, at the beginning itself, we spoke about resources. The earth has resources. Resources means these are the factors. What is the meaning of factors? It's a mathematical term we use. Factor means, by multiplying two or three numbers, you get another number. So in the same way, factors of production means by making use of multiplying or using, adding these things, we produce something. So the factors are of, actually there are three main basic factors of production, and a fourth one also has been added to it to make four factors of production. So what are these four? So as I said, I have given an introduction of what is resources or factors of production. Right, one of the most basic factor of production is called the land. What do we mean by land is these are the gifts of nature, like land, that means physical land for cultivation, or forest, or even sea, mountains, and other, different sources of water, coal, petroleum reserves, and gem mines, and all of this. I mean, everything which is given by the nature, which are gifts of nature, which can be used to make goods. That's what we call land. Second, this is also given by nature. It's called labor. That means this is the human factor, the physical effort put by, manual laborers, or mental effort put by, professional workers. So they are, whether it is physical or mental way, they involve in producing a good or a service, we call they are labor. So land is one, labor is another. And the third one is called capital. Now, capital is a factor of production. It is a resource, but not a gift of nature, but it is a gift of humans. That means man has made these resources, not we people. Now, there are companies, there are businesses, there are workers who make tools, who make machines, who make money, who make buildings. Now, these tools, machines, money, buildings, equipment, all of these are also used up in production, producing goods and services. So these are also resources, but this resource is made by the man-made resource. And finally, we have another resource called entrepreneurship, entrepreneurs, or enterprise. This is a human resource, but this is not to be called a labor, because labor means people who work for a business. But an entrepreneur is a person who sets up a business, who runs a business, who manages a business. Now, these are people who invest their money, who invest their time and everything to bring the other three factors of production, that is land, labor, and capital, into a business unit. Now, see, for example, there's land. Let's say, for example, there are trees in the forest. And there is a labor who is very good at, cutting down trees and turning them into timber and making tables and chairs out of it. He's a talented person. And there are equipment like saw blade and machines for cutting the wood, what do you call, trees into timber and wood and so on. But these three will stay as they are, because these three are not going to take the effort. Now, the labor is never going to, invest money and buy machines or saw blade and whatever, and get permission from the government to cut down trees and all that, he's not going to invest money like that. And machines are not going to walk into the factory as they are. So what happens is there is need of a person, who is ready to take risk. What's the risk? That person will have to spend money and buy the machines and equipment, get the permission from the government and cut the trees down and make tables and chairs and see whether these will sell or not. He will have to pay to the workers as well. So if these chairs and tables never get sold, that person will lose all the money paid for the government for permission to buy the equipment, to pay for the labor and everything. But that person is ready to take that risk because he knows or she knows that taking such risk will help maybe to make a lot of profits. So this is what we call, this is the person who is called the entrepreneur or enterprise. This factor is called or entrepreneurship. Okay, so we have discussed all the 4 different types of factors of production with this slide. Right. Now, any of the resource, now, for example, we just said that entrepreneurs, they are willing to take risk and they invest their money. But why do they like to take risk is because, as I said, they know if they are successful, they can make profit. So that means they look for a reward. So every factor of production has a reward. So those are, for example, landlords. Those who have land, they receive a reward called rent. And labor workers, their reward is called wages. Capital, like for example, money is capital. Money, those who have money, they can lend the money and make interest. And finally, the entrepreneurs, they make profit. So enterprise makes profit. So that's all for the factors of productions and their rewards. Right. Now, using these factors of production, we make goods and services. In fact, in this commercial world, we make variety of different types of goods. Of course, we are not going to talk about like different types of goods like in this, like TVs and cars and all that, but we are going to speak about types of goods in terms of, economic terms that we use. Okay. So these types of goods can be classified in many different ways. One of the most basic classification is about free and economic goods, right? First of all, yes, I'm going to talk to you about the free goods, but actually remember, free goods actually do not matter in, when discussing about economics and economic problems. We will see why is the case. Okay, so anyway, free goods means these are goods that are given by the nature, like the air we breathe, the sunlight. Now, these goods, since these are, given by the nature and not man-made, because of that reason, normally when you compare the human bonds, there is unlimited supply of these goods. For example, there's plenty of sunlight during the day, and there is plenty of air, oxygen for all of us to breathe. So they are unlimited in supply, and there is no ownership for these goods, and there is no price as well. We don't have to pay for the sun or the air that we breathe and all that. So because of this reason, we call it a free good. And since it's unlimited in supply, it doesn't become the matter of economics as a subject to study. But on the other hand, the economic goods means these goods that we are talking about are goods that are made by humans, man-made goods. Like it can be chocolates, TV, tables, and books, and whatever you name it. So whatever you name it, but made by us, man-made goods. So since these are man-made goods, what happens is there is ownership. When the factory produces, the factory owns it. When it is sold to a supermarket, the supermarket owns it. And when the supermarket sells it to a customer, the customer will own it. So the ownership exists and ownership can be transferred also. And how the ownership is transferred for these kind of goods is for a price. So there is price for economic goods, and the economic goods are always in limited supply. Now, for example, whether it is cars or chocolates or whatever it is, when a factory produces a certain number, 100,000, million, trillion, so even the factory produces trillion units a day, so it is maximized. There is a maximum limit of a trillion per day. So there is, these goods are limited in supply. So this is the difference between free and economic goods. So since economic goods are the ones which are, in limited supply, economic goods are the ones which we will be discussing much in economics as a subject. So when we speak about that, the economic goods can be once again divided into two types called consumer and capital goods. So what do I mean by consumer goods is, now some of these economic goods like TV, chocolates, washing machines, books, and all sort of things, these goods are used by you and me to satisfy our own needs. But if you look at some goods like a machine in a factory or a factory building or whatever, these goods are also man-made goods. These goods are also economic goods, but these goods are used to make some other goods. So when something helps us to produce other goods, we call those capital goods. And when something just helps us to make ourselves happy, we call that consumer goods. Right. Next, now the consumer goods, once again, we can divide into two different types of consumer goods. Those are durable and non-durable. So what do we mean by durable is, now out of the examples of consumer goods that I gave earlier, if you talk about TV or washing machine, once we buy this, we are not going to use 1 day or 2 days or 3 days and throw. We will be using this for a while, sometimes for years. So these are what we call durable goods. That means goods that last long. But there are some goods which are non-durable, sometimes just one use or sometimes just a few use, like the clothes we wear, books or pens or chocolates. So those are what we call non-durable consumer goods. Right. Okay. So we spoke about one way of classifying, that is economic and free goods, and economic goods can be classified into consumer and capital goods, and consumer goods can also be classified into durable and non-durable, right? Another way of classifying goods is as public and merit goods, right? So what are public goods is, there are some goods people like to consume, people like to use, but if you ask them to pay for those, nobody will be willing to pay. For example, the street lights. Now, there are street lights at night time. It gives us light when we drive and all that. But if if a company provides street lights in our street and comes home and say, okay, please pay for street lights, we would say, we don't need any street lights. We have lights at home. We have lights in our vehicles, cars. So we don't need that. We are not ready to pay. So in this case, there should be someone providing these goods and collecting the money from us indirectly without our knowledge that we are paying for those goods. So that's where the government comes forward. So government provides these goods for free of charge at the point of consumption. That means when we are using, we use the street lights for free, but indirectly, the government collects the money from us in terms of taxes. So those are what we call free goods, goods that are only provided by the government. But merit goods actually are provided by the government as well as the private sector. When the government provides these goods, the government would be providing these goods for either free or maybe a very nominal charge they may make. Because these are goods the government thinks that everyone has the right to have this. So the most popular examples of merit goods are education and healthcare. So these are provided by the government in some countries for completely free or for a nominal fee. But private sector also provides this because there are people who are ready to pay for education and healthcare, although they are not ready to pay for street lights. So those people may receive these products from private. So private sector, also private schools, private hospitals, they also provide this. But when they provide, obviously they are going to charge a lot. And they will only provide a very little for those who are willing to pay for. Right. When we speak about the public and merit goods, right? So I have already explained you this part as well, and also have given you examples of, so you can pause the video and copy these notes as well as you might have copied the previous one. All right, now let's move on to something else. Now we just said that, goods are to be made, services are to be made, produced. That's what we mean by production. Now, when we speak about production, there are many different ways, that mean techniques that a business can use to produce. Now, sometimes a business can produce, like let's say, for example, a tailor, a tailor shop where get your shirt or trousers stitched. Sometimes a tailor might employ about, let's say, 10 workers and get all the 10 workers, that means each one of them, to involve in everything related to making a shirt, like cutting, sewing, buttoning, ironing, packing. All of these jobs can be done by everyone in that shop. That means all the 10 workers do all of these. This is a normal production method, basic production method, where all of them involve in all the jobs. But sometimes what happens is, some businesses, what they do is, instead of getting all of them to do everything, they, get each worker, right? Each worker will be producing or will be involving in one function, one small function. That means, let's say, for example, if the tailor thinks, okay, no, I'm going to get 2 of the workers to involve only in cutting, and 3 or 4 of them will be, sewing the shirts, and another 2 will be involved in ironing, and the other 2 will be in buttoning, or another 2 will be in packing. So like this, he divides the workers and give each worker a smaller task to do. And this is what we mean by division of labor or specialization. So what is division of labor is that it means that, when we are trying to get a job divided into many smaller tasks and appointing a worker or maybe a group of workers to, complete just one task out of the whole production, right? As here I have given an example of a car assembly plant where the production process is divided into smaller tasks and getting a worker or a group of workers to complete just one task. Right, specialization. Now, we discussed about in the last subheading, it says division of labor and specialization. Why we put both of them together is, division of labor and specialization, both of these are interrelated. They are not exactly the same, but they relate to one another. Now, division of labor is when a big job, when the whole job is divided into smaller tasks, and to perform each task, we have a worker or a group of workers. On the other hand, specialization is when a worker just concentrates on one part of the whole job. So in that case, specialization occurs because of division of labor, because when we just give a part of the whole process for each person to perform, that person will become, very good at that particular task. So the person becomes specialized. And on the other hand, we can say division of labor happens because of specialization. That is, so that means specialization occurs because of division of labor, and division of labor occurs because of specialization. Why? For example, since people are qualified themselves in one field nowadays, So they only choose that. So of the whole production process, the whole provision of service process, one person would take just one task. Right. So when it comes to specialization, there are different types of specialization. One is called specialization by individual. That is when a person specializes in just one job. Like, let's say, for example, a pediatrician doctor who is specialized in only child care or only the treating for children, rather than, you know, like diversifying into every different aspect of medicine. An economics teacher. So those are what we call specialization by individuals. But then we may also have other types of specialization. We say specialization by firms. This is when you know, a business specializes in something. Now, let's say, for example, if you take in some countries, like let's say, for example, in India, Bajaj is very famous for motorbikes and auto parts. So that is an example of specialization by firms. In Japan, if you take uh, Honda is specialized for the cars which are, like highly, I mean, not racing cars, obviously, normal, cars for use by normal people, but still not the racers. But still, these cars can be raised its acceleration and you can drive it with, some thrill, maybe. All right. So that is specialization by firms, right? And specialization sometimes happens by regions, regional specialization. If you take Indonesia, Bali is highly specialized for tourism, holidays, right? Long time back in the UK, if you, took this example, like Sheffield was very specialized for steel industry. So like that. Mm. Now, this is an example from Sri Lanka. Ratnapura, a city which is specialized for gems, and Malwana, another city specialized for rambutan, those hairy fruits, right? And sometimes, let's say some countries concentrate in the production of a particular good. So we call it specialization by countries, Japan for electronics, and Belgium for chocolates, and so on. So these are the different types of specialization by a worker, by a firm, by a region in a country, or specialization by a nation, right? Now let's look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of specialization and division of labor. Both you have questions, based on this as well at both GCE and GCSE or GCSE levels, right? So what are the advantages of specialization? One of the main advantage is that, you are not getting the worker to involve in everything. Like, for example, in the tailor example I gave you, it's not about cutting, stitching, buttoning, ironing, all that is done by the same person. So here what happens is, uh, we are giving just one task. So when doing the same task from morning till evening on daily basis, the worker becomes skilled, highly skilled and efficient in that. So that's a benefit. And there is no time being wasted from switching. Now, for example, let's say it is a human nature that, when you do one thing and then from that you go to another, that between that gap, we are very good at wasting some time. Now, let's say, for example, a person who has to be doing the cutting of a shirt based on somebody's measurements. And after finishing that, before he or she starts, sewing the shirt, then he or she might, spend some time chatting with someone, okay, moving here and there like that. So this time waste doesn't happen when you just sit or stand or whichever the position you are in, when you are just doing from morning till evening the same job. So there's no time wasted. And also, training new workers is very easy and quick here because you are not going to train the workers all the aspects of production. You're just going to train each worker just to do one small task. So it is easy and quicker to train them, and for the workers also, it's easy to learn and quick to learn. Next is machines and equipment can be used continuously. So this makes also efficiency of use of equipment and machine. For example, see, now let's say there are 10 workers and all of them do everything. So we may buy 10 sewing machines. And while some of the staff are involved in cutting or ironing, the sewing machine will be underproductive. It will not be used. But if you have just got, few staff to do few things, so you will only have a few staff to do sewing. So you will only buy maybe 3 or 4 sewing machines. And whilst the others are cutting and passing, these people will be simply continuously sewing the shirts, stitching it. So that means what happens is all the machines and equipment will be used continuously and more efficiently, right? So those are the advantages of division of labor, but everything has its cons as well. So as division of labor and specialization as well. One of the main disadvantage is the boredom, because morning till evening and daily basis, when you are repeating the same task, there will be a point when the workers become just bored, and when they become bored, they also become inefficient because they will not show interest in what they are doing. Next, this boredom can sometimes lead to even fall in quality and fall in workers' own skills. Because of boredom, like I said, they may delay, they may not show much interest, and that's when the second disadvantage can occur. There's another big problem. Now, I told you earlier, okay, whilst the other person is cutting and passing, the person who is involved in stitching, he will or she will carry on. But what happens? One day, if the person, in charge of cutting doesn't come to work or goes on a strike, or maybe a group of such people, then the whole production will come to a standstill. That's a problem because of, we call it this happens because of interdependency. That means all workers are dependent on each other. And another big problem is that there is a risk of some workers being replaced by machines and robots and all that. Because what happens is, it's a small task. Now, humans are like, when they are doing multitasking, they are multi-talented like that. And humans, they have variety. But what happens is, when you just give the workers just one task, only cutting, only stitching, only buttoning, only ironing like that. So with time, there may be robots or machines, automated machines, which may be introduced to perform those tasks. So what will happen is workers may lose jobs. Okay, so there are other disadvantages also, obviously, which are not listed here. One of which is also monotony, leading to, that means I'm not talking about the monotony of workers. I mean, machines are all standardized actually. So standardized products leading to lack of variety. When humans make, most of the time what happens is, all the products may not be standardized, but if one was produced and the next unit may be produced at a much like better quality, a different variety. All right, okay. So that was about division of labor and specialization. Now let's move on to another thing. We are actually still discussing the basic concepts in economics. That's what we are doing now. Okay, stages of production or industry. Right. What do you mean by stages of production or industry? Is, you see, now let's imagine a car. You go to a car sale and you see many different varieties of models of cars, and ultimately you like one, you like everything maybe, but you only want to buy one. So you like one and you buy that car. Now, this car we got from the car sales. But the truth is, the life of this car did not begin at the car sale. It began somewhere else. So stages of production or industries, what do we mean is that these are different stages through which, a product passes down its whole life. Like, for example, the car, now, although we get the car from the car sale, initially, I mean, prior to this, your car or this particular car would have been, in where? In the car manufacturing plant. That means in the factory. Okay, so the car was in the factory. But then, although the car was in the factory, the car's life didn't begin in the factory as well. Because what happens is, now how do we make a car? In order to make a car, we need engine, we need steel, car body, windscreen. Now these, most of the time what happens is these parts are not produced by that car assembly plant. These different parts will be produced by different factories. So then those were produced there. But then again, to produce car body, steel industry has to produce steel, right? For steel, we need to extract iron ore. Windscreen is produced using silica, sand, so which has to be extracted from the nature. So most cases, most products, what happens is they start their life in the nature. So this is called the first stage of production or primary industry, right? So production of all goods start in different stages. That is the definition that is given. You can pause the video and copy this note down, right? So the first stage of industry is called the primary industry. So what is primary industry is these are where we get the stuff from the nature. So there are 4 different types of primary industry. Actually, primary has another word called extractive industry, because what happens here is in this industry, we are taking raw materials. Sometimes raw materials means these are materials using which we make other goods. We cannot consume them directly. But sometimes in primary industry, we also get goods that can be consumed. For example, food, like fruits and vegetables and fish and various other things. Those also we get from the primary, from the nature, right? So primary industry is called the extractive industry, where raw materials and food are extracted from the nature. So there are 4 popular types of primary industry called 3FM: forestry, fishing, farming, and mining. Forestry, what happens there is we, cut down trees for timber. Fishing, we fish for maybe consuming directly or for other like canned fish industry, or maybe using the fish making some other products, whatever. Farming, right? We farm for vegetable, fruit, animals, and all that. And these farm, now, for example, let's say a rubber tree comes under farming industry. So the rubber tree, from the rubber tree, we extract the rubber milk, which will be sent to the rubber making manufacturing like plant, where they make rubber sheets and then tires, and then that goes to the cars like that. Mining industry, where we mine for iron ore, we mine for silica, we mine for various things, and these things go to next stage, and so on, and finally we come up with a big product. Okay. Secondary industry is the second stage of production, where whatever the raw materials that was extracted in the primary sector is sent to factories to make finished and partly finished goods. In secondary, there are 2 types of secondary industry. We call it manufacturing and assembly. What's the difference between these two is, my dears? In manufacturing industry, what happens is the raw materials are completely transformed into finished goods. Like, let's say, the raw material like rubber. Rubber is in the form of a milk, the natural rubber I'm talking about. Now, once you use that in the factory to transform into rubber sheets, that completely changes. Let me give you another example. Chocolate, a sweet example. Now, we use cocoa, sugar, and milk. Now, these things goes under a particular process in the chocolate manufacturing plant, and once the chocolate is made, can we separate sugar, cocoa, and milk? We cannot. We don't see those. We see a complete different thing. That's what we mean by transfer industry or manufacturing industry. Here the raw materials are, as it says, transferred to a new thing. But assembly industry, what happens is We are just joining things together. Necessarily, the good doesn't look different from as it was before. Like, for example, in car manufacturing plant, the tire, windscreen, body, all of these things are put together. And after making the car, still the tire looks the same. It was circular before, and now it has not become a, you know, what do you call a squad wheel. No. So like that, all the things are, they look the same. So no transferring, it's just assembling, it's just to putting together. So whatever it is, these are examples of second stage of production where raw materials are transformed into finished goods. Right, okay. The next is tertiary industry, which is the third stage of production. Now, what happens is the car has been produced, primary producers, all those various things like tires and stuff needed, rubber and stuff needed, and that is transferred into tire and various other things, and that is assembled in the assembly industry in second stage. So now the car is produced, but although the car is produced by Japan or let's say whichever the country, and it has to come to UK for customers in England to use. So how can that happen? That's the tertiary industry. So tertiary industry is completely a service-oriented sector where businesses who either manufacture or who do not produce, but they buy from the manufacturers and send it to consumers. So providing the goods and providing the services to consumers is what happens in the tertiary sector. And tertiary sector mainly has two. One is called the commercial activities and other one is called the direct services. Now the commercial activities or commerce, actually this particular, all the functions involved in commerce is the one which forms another GCSE subject called commerce. If any one of you are interested to get a very good grade at GCSE, I would suggest you try commerce paper doing as an extra subject. Okay, right. So, sorry, commerce or the commercial activities is one tertiary sector. Direct service is another tertiary sector. Let me first talk about direct services. Direct services means these are not goods, completely services. So the services which are produced by the person who produces the service and gives directly. Like, for example, teacher is a person who produces teaching and gives directly to the students. Doctor is a person who gives medical consultancy, gives directly to the patient. But commercial activities involve goods being transferred, delivered to the consumers. So this has wider different functions to perform. So mainly we say commerce involves two things, as you can see, trade and aids to trade, right? By definition, commerce means, we say commerce is all the activities involved in the distribution of goods from the producer to the consumer. That means from the company which makes the product and all the things involved in whatever the, like functions that we have to perform, whatever we have to do so that we bring the products from the producer to the consumers, all those things are part of commerce. So commerce includes two things, trade and aids to trade. Trade simply means buying and selling, exchanging of goods for money. So trade, buying and selling is one part of commerce, and aids to trade means when buying and selling happens, we need some help. We need to give some assistance. We need to help the traders. So those helping, aiding, we say auxiliary services, those are aids to trade. Okay. So trade, as I said, simply buying and selling of goods and services, but trade can also take place within a country. We call it local trade, or trade when it takes place between different countries. We call it international trade. All right. Aids to trade, on the other hand, now let's say, for example, when a business wants to sell the goods to, some customers, or when the business wants to buy also, it will need several different services to assist the business, because a business cannot do everything on its own. One of the service that a business needs in assistance is banking, because banking helps us to transfer money between accounts easily within a country, nowadays even internationally. So we don't have to carry a lot of money. Our customers don't have to carry a lot of money. So banking, not only, of course, payments, banking also helps sometimes by lending money to businesses, safeguarding businesses' money, and so on. That's an aid to trade. Insurance, when we are into business, the business world is actually full of risks. Of course, some risks cannot be, covered at all, but there are some risks which can be covered by an insurance company. And in case we face such risk, the insurance company or the insurer can give us, some compensation. Right. That is insurance which is needed by traders. Warehousing means now not all businesses have their own storage facilities and so on. So the businesses may need support. That means we may be able to, get the support of other warehouses, to get them to run smoothly by buying in bulk and storing and all that. Communication, like, we should be able to communicate with our customers, with our suppliers. So we need services like, postal services, telephone, fax, and internet, and various things. So these companies who provide, they are also aiding the traders. And advertising, for us to make our customers aware of our products and, make, I mean, trying to sell successfully to customers. That's another important service, that is advertising. And finally, we have transport, because nowadays businesses are so diversified that businesses are, not just selling and buying within a country, but from different parts of the world, actually, they are buying and selling too. So transport, road, rail, you know, sea, all of these services are needed by businesses, by the traders. Okay, right now, aids to trade and trade. This section, commerce, of course, you can study this as a subject. I mean, in commerce as a subject when you do. That is a very interesting subject and very easy to, score a great grade at the GCSEs. Okay, so direct services is something which is like provided by the producers directly to the consumers, as I said. So examples are doctors, teachers, singer, actor, nurses, and all of that. All right, okay. So we have actually come to the end of the topic 1 of Unit 1, which is a basic economic concepts. So for Unit 1, as I said at the beginning, for economic syllabus for GCSE, GCE O level, and IGCSEs, I have classified it into about 26 units. So of that, Unit 1 is the only unit I have separated into 3 different videos, 3 different topics. So because these are all basic concepts that we will be discussing. So this is the first set out of the 3. Right. I'll see you again in another video. Until then, take care and goodbye.